Some anomalies kill for fun, others for food, others because they simply have no choice. On the other side of the coin, some want nothing more than to spread love, joy, and happiness. But it's rare that you see an anomaly that has genuinely pure intentions, but whose attempts to do good often turn deadly. One such figure, and the subject of today's tale, is SCP-049, the Plague Doctor. If you're at all familiar with the SCP Foundation, then you will have likely heard of the infamous Plague Doctor. For those of you who haven't, here's a bit of context for SCP-049. He appears exactly as you'd expect a plague doctor from the late medieval period or Renaissance periods. A tall figure shrouded in long black robes, a hood over his head with only a Venetian-beaked mask protruding from underneath. These aren't just a fashion statement either. The SCP Foundation discovered that these are all part of SCP-049's physical body, sharing a similar structure to muscle and bone. The Plague Doctor's primary goal is to find those he considers to be infected with something he refers to as the pestilence. If he ever senses this affliction, he will attempt to make direct skin contact with the person carrying it. Why? Because SCP-049's touch is lethal, killing anyone he comes into contact with. You might think that's all the Plague Doctor does, goes from person to person killing them with his deadly touch, but you would be wrong. Once he's killed a victim, SCP-049 then begins performing a crude, outdated form of surgery on their corpse. Using equipment he produces from his mysterious and apparently bottomless magical medical satchel, he injects a number of unknown chemicals into the corpse, which brings them back to life and turns them into an instance of SCP-049-2, or in other words, a vicious, mindless zombie. At present, SCP-049 is kept secure in a holding cell by the Foundation under watch by surveillance cameras for 24 hours a day. And that is where our story begins. The tale of a deadly, dangerous doctor and his days spent in captivity. Locked away in a cage, contained by the SCP Foundation, there he sits, alone. It is a tale known only by the simple title, Going Home. It begins with the Plague Doctor, left alone in his cell. He had been there for such a long time that he'd forgotten exactly how long. But there he sat, taunted by the sensation of pestilence around him. It was a small, almost undetectable feeling, but it reeked of decay and disease, hanging in the very air particles of SCP-049's cell. Although they had long since stopped the practice, the SCP Foundation used to send its doctors and researchers into 049's cell, bringing him cadavers as test subjects. The Plague Doctor would use these specimens to hone his craft, perfecting his method of transforming the dead into instances of SCP-049-2. But of course, the doctors working for the Foundation weren't exactly free of disease themselves, and they too often needed to be cured by his touch. And soon they stopped visiting SCP-049 in person, leaving him alone in his cell. Even these so-called people of science feared the true cure, it seemed. They would talk to the Plague Doctor via an intercom system, interviewing him and asking questions about what he did or how he felt. One question stood out to SCP-049. The Foundation researchers had asked him if he had any regrets for what he had done to people. The Plague Doctor thought it foolish to even ask. And then even the questions coming through the intercom stopped after a while. For a time, SCP-049 was happy in his cell, left alone with his thoughts, safe from the diseases of the outside world. The Plague Doctor was at peace for a change, resting in comfort, until the familiar smell of pestilence returned. The presence of disease drove him to attempt an escape. Producing his medical implements from his bag he kept concealed in his robes, SCP-049 tried to pry open the door to his cell. He wasn't sure how long it took. The passage of time had long since stopped registering to him, but eventually he had it open, just enough so that he could pass through, out into the corridor beyond the chamber that he had been held in. There was no one else around. No doctors or researchers or Foundation security personnel. No one to stop the Plague Doctor from following the stench of the disease that had driven him to find a way out of containment. Navigating through the hallways of the Foundation facility, SCP-049 tracked the source of the disease to a locker. With little trouble, he opened it, finding a metallic box within. As he studied the container, his fingers found the button that opened it. It hissed as the gases kept the inside of the box mixed with the air. The cold vapor hit the plague doctor in the face, catching him by surprise and making him drop the box. Reasserting himself, the plague doctor bent over and picked up the contents of the refrigerated container. A single mosquito. It wasn't the insect itself that had drawn SCP-049 out of his cell. True, mosquitoes are known to spread diseases like malaria, but it was what was inside this mosquito that the doctor wanted to eradicate. Its blood sac was full, swollen with dark fluid that SCP-049 knew to be infected. Using the metal box as an improvised operating table, he produced his bag of medical implements, and the doctor began to operate. He retrieved a syringe from his bag and a vial filled with thick black liquid. Half filling the syringe with the liquid, he plunged the needle into the mosquito and extracted the blood that the insect was carrying. The infected bodily fluid mixed with the medicine in the doctor's syringe, leaving the bug as little more than a dry husk. The plague doctor watched as the two substances mixed together before stabbing back into the mosquito, filling the creature with a combination of both liquids. He refused to leave any trace of pestilence in the insect's body. The mosquito twitched itself back to life, looking around until it saw SCP-049 observing it. "Who's there?" it asked. "Where's Merle?" "There is no one here but me and you," the doctor explained. "You are in a prison though. The wardens, it seems, have left." "A prison?" the insect responded. "Oh god, I'm at Site 19! Naturally, it seemed rather strange for a mosquito to be able to talk, let alone know about the highly classified Site 19. But as is always the case in the SCP Foundation, the strange always has an anomalous explanation. You see, this mosquito was not like any other. For one, she even had a name. It was Leslie. As it turned out, Leslie was part of an SCP, one of the Foundation's own creation, SCP-3774. These were a genetically and cybernetically enhanced species of mosquito. Why would the Foundation spend time and resources creating something like this? Originally, they were designed as an undetectable, covert way of keeping tabs on persons of interest to the SCP Foundation. The Plague Doctor thought it odd that after having spent so much time in prison there, that he should finally learn the name of Site 19 from a mosquito of all things. Leslie seemed to be in a state of panic, however urgently insisting that she had to get back to someone named Merle. SCP-049 had no clue what she meant. He'd never encountered anyone that went by that name, and had no idea where to even begin looking. "I know where he lives. I can find it," the mosquito insisted. I don't know how I could ever get out of here." She was wary of the creature she found herself talking to. Despite being a genetically engineered insect, Leslie was, for all intents and purposes, an agent of the SCP Foundation, and now she was currently conversing with an anomaly that she knew nothing about. But he wasn't trying to harm her. In fact, whatever the Plague Doctor had done seemed to have revived her. "I have gotten myself this far, and now that I have no further reason to stay here," the doctor announced, holding a hand out for Leslie to fly up to. Then you'll help me get out of here?" she asked, readying her wings and landing in his palm. "I will," SCP-049 agreed. The pair introduced themselves properly, Leslie giving SCP-049 her name while he just instructed her to call him Doctor before they set out together. After almost a week of traveling on foot through rugged terrain and harsh winds, the Plague Doctor and his insect companion had yet to encounter another living soul. Thick dark clouds hung in the sky above them, and Leslie soon found it hard to remember what the sun looked like. She feared that she might even forget Merle's face. "We're close," she said. "Just a few more miles and then..." "And then we will arrive," SCP-049 finished her sentence. "Tell me, Doctor, why did you come all this way with me?" Leslie the mosquito asked. "You could have left when we got out, gone on your own way." In response, he gave one simple sentence. "Merely because I wanted to." Finally, the intrepid pair arrived at a house once belonging to Merle. It was abandoned, ramshackle, in a total state of disrepair. Decades had passed since anyone had set foot in the place. The living room that had once been so familiar to Leslie had now been transformed into a barren, empty space. The sight of it made her so distraught with sadness that she would have been sick, if mosquitoes could be sick. Merle, whoever he was or had been, was now nowhere to be found. One of Leslie's cybernetic enhancements was an internal positioning system, giving her all sorts of data and readouts, including a clock. It told her just how long she'd been away for. "I've been dead for 200 years?" the mosquito cried in the palm of the doctor's hand. Then Merle is dead. Everyone is dead." She kept repeating it to herself over and over, as if she was trying to convince herself of what had happened. Eventually, the words lost all meaning. As he held Leslie in his hands, perhaps the plague doctor felt sorry for the mosquito. After all, the plague doctor had always had a respectful, polite personality despite his frightening exterior. He had always believed that he'd acted in service of the greater good, trying to cure the world of pestilence, to bring the end of disease. He only ever killed because, to him, it was in his victim's best interest for him to perform his procedures. To his captors at the SCP Foundation, the doctor had been courteous and cooperative, and he acted the same towards his fellow SCPs. Not just Leslie, but even the sort of anomalies with nothing but hatred in their hearts. The doctor saw them as just further victims of the pestilence, in need of curing. SCP-049 sat in silence for a while with his mosquito friend, letting her mourn the loss of Merle and everything she had ever known. "Where will you go now?" he asked. Still in tears, barely able to speak through her sobs, Leslie decided that she wanted to stay where she was. The insect wanted to live where Merle had lived, in a desperate attempt to recapture the world that she once knew. Sitting in the plague doctor's gloved hands, still sobbing even though she had run out of tears, Leslie said, Any minute Merle will come through the door." The plague doctor held his tiny companion where she was, while she grieved. "Then I will wait for him," he told her. "Here, with you." Now go check out SCP-049, the Plague Doctor Captured, and SCP-049, What Actually Is the Pestilence, the Plague Doctor Questions and Theories, for more on this enigmatic medicine man.